We all have four bodies: physical, emotional, creative, spiritual. And just like the physical body has blood flowing through it, and if the blood stops at any point, you get a heart attack. But there's also, each body is that you have, a creative body, emotional body, spiritual body, also has a kind of blood to it. But also there's a kind of blood that flows between the bodies. And if there's any blockage at all, you're going to fail.
What would happen if we just told the truth?
Welcome to Truth Works, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of leadership and work.
And what needs to change? I'm Jessica Neal.
And I'm Patty McCord.
Our journey together started in HR, but trust us, it's evolved into something wild, honest, and well, a bit rebellious.
So throw out the handbook. We're here to redefine rules to work for us, not against us.
Let's dive into another episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Truth Works. I'm Jessica Neal, your host, and today I'm here with a fascinating guest. James Altucher is someone founders either tend to quote constantly or quietly read when things are falling apart. James has built and sold companies, lost millions, rebuilt, has been on the floors of the depths of despair and come back many a times. I'm not quite sure how, but we're going to find out all about it today. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having the show. I'm a big fan and I admire what you're doing, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, me too. I don't know. I think many of my listeners probably know your story, but let's tell it a little bit, because you have, I guess, over time failed big, where I think you had close to 50 million in your bank account, and then months later, like $46 or something. And
yeah, those numbers are pretty close. Yes.
Yeah. And you were very depressed, which I get. So just take us through your story. You and I were talking before we started recording that, it's such a small world. You were at HBO in your beginnings, and I was at Netflix, and our worlds are like colliding in a different way now with this whole acquisition that may happen soon. So tell us the James story. How did this all start?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of started at HBO, actually, where I was working in the IT department at HBO, which is the least respected department at HBO. HBO is an entertainment creative company. The IT guys put them in a different building. We didn't even work in the HBO building. Put them in a different building. We don't want to see them, hear them. We just need them to make things work. And from there, though, this was like in the 90s. Maybe like 5 people in New York City knew how to make a website. And right. I fortunately was one of them. And I'm not even exaggerating. There were literally 5 people who knew how to make a website. We all knew each other. We all started companies making websites. I had started making HBO's website, but then while I was a full-time employee at HBO, at night I had my own company making websites for AmericanExpress.com, almost all the movie studios, all the record labels at the time. I made websites for them. So I built up a fairly big company. After 18 months of doing both, working full-time at HBO and doing my company, it was called Reset, I left HBO full-time, kept HBO as a client, but had many other companies as clients, eventually sold. And as you said, I had, a lot of money in the bank, generational wealth. And I don't know, I thought sometimes when you think you're smart at one thing, you think you're smart at everything. And I figured, I'm so smart. I made all this money. I'd be a great investor. And at the time, this is again, like late 90s, early 00s, I knew nothing about investing. I have since done a great study of investing, but at that time, zero. And I lost everything. And I was so stupid about it. And I regret it deeply for many reasons. And I lost everything. I got depressed, lost family, lost house, lost everything. My life had to really change in a lot of ways. That was painful. And I never thought I would be able, I wasn't really entrepreneurial, at least at the time, or I didn't think I was. The reason I really wanted to get into HBO, for instance, through the back door, the IT department, was because I wanted to make TV shows. Like anybody who works at HBO, either wants to like write novels or makes TV shows, or
Right.
anyone who works at any entertainment company has some secret dreams. And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, but I ended up doing it. I ended up falling into it, and I ended up getting this, what I call now the sickness, which is once I made 10, $15 million, I figured, oh, everyone else is making 10, $15 million, which was not true, but that's how my mind worked. And I figured I'm going to be poor unless I make $100 million. So that forced me to take greater risks than I should have, and not really respect the money that I had. And the psychology of money was really warped inside of me, and I ended up losing everything. Money, there's three skills to money: making it, keeping it, growing it. And I had the ability to make it, but not keep it or grow it. They're different skills. And so eventually, though, I was able to build back, start other companies. But then I got in this cycle where I was making it, but I wasn't respecting the keeping it and growing it. And I just had to learn a lot about a lot of things, particularly about myself, to really uncover what was happening, and in order to successfully live life. It's not about making money. It's about how do you success. We only have this one life. How do you successfully live life? Now, of course, money can buy a lot of things related to freedom, but it could also bring a lot of misery as well.
Yeah, it can. So what are these lessons that you learned on sort of the, respecting and keeping side?
It's interesting because I've been writing about this topic for probably about 15 years. And when I first started writing about this, it was a very taboo topic. Like right now, I would say failure is the main topic entrepreneurs write about. And I respect that. But at the time, nobody was writing about it. And I would write these stories and books. I wrote several books about this topic. And people would write to me afterwards and say, you can't write this. Nobody's going to ever trust you again with money. Even though they see the lessons I've learned and how I've educated myself and so on, they say no one's going to ever trust you. And it turns out that by writing about these things, A, I built up quite a sizable audience, and B, I ended up having more opportunities than ever because actually more people trust me because I'm being honest about the ups and downs. Everyone goes through ups and downs, maybe not with as extreme volatility, sometimes with more volatility, sometimes with less.
Yeah.
But these are like people, two types of people would write me. They would say, dude, you can't write like this. No one's ever going to give you opportunities again. And then other people would write to me and say, hey, I'm glad you're writing about this. I never told anybody, but this, and this, happened to me. And it's really helpful. Thank you. And so it was interesting to see these kind of subterranean depths of the financial world that where we all have experienced these things. And so the reason I say this is because a lot of what I say now that I wrote then is almost going to sound like cliche because a lot of people have since, this failure kind of category has become more mainstream, of course. And so I viewed it in a very kind of weird way. I viewed that we all have four bodies: physical, emotional, creative, spiritual. And just like the physical body has blood flowing through it, and if the blood stops at any point, you get a heart attack. But there's also each body that you have, a creative body, emotional body, spiritual body, also has a kind of blood to it. But also there's a kind of blood that flows between the bodies. And if there's any blockage at all, you're going to fail. So you're going to have a heart attack of some sort. An emotional attack, a spiritual attack, a creative attack. And so you have to keep everything flowing smoothly on a good, let's call it frequency. So physical body, we all know, sleep, eat, move, / exercise. Emotional body, really cater every day, not just occasionally, but really cater every day to your relationships and your understanding of relationships. And that's hard. That's really hard. It's just as hard as physical health. Like even if you're married in a happy relationship, which is sort of the dream, you're going to have communication problems where, this person's here and this person's there. You have to work on these things or else you're going to get an emotional heart attack and you won't be able to, if you're going through a fight with your partner, you're not going to be able to come up with creative ideas that day. So it's just, you're not going to do it or you're not going to act on those ideas. Same thing with what I call the creative body. And I had this exercise I would do every day, write 10 ideas a day down. And
Yeah, I think I saw you like bought like all these waiter pads or like
Yeah.
notepads
Yeah.
or
Like,
something.
so I used to take these really long walks every day because I was broke and had nothing else to do, and I was desperately trying to sell a house before the bank would take it away from me. And wandered into this restaurant supplies store, and there were 100 waiters pads available for $10, so 10 cents a pad. And I've been using them ever since. I don't know where my pads are right now. And every day I take one out and I write 10 ideas down. Now, very critical. Does not have to be 10 good ideas. It could be 10 horrible ideas. The whole point is to put in is the consistency, is to put in the creative muscle is a muscle. And if you don't use it, it atrophies like any other muscle. It atrophies
Right.
very quickly. So you have to build it up and strengthen it. And you do that again, not by writing 10 good ideas a day down. That's impossible. That's 3,650 great ideas a year. No one does that. Einstein can't do that. So
No.
just 10 bad ideas a day down. And that's how you build up that muscle. And I noticed my entire mood got so much better in just 2 or 3 weeks of doing that. And then maybe after 2 or 3 months, I actually was coming up with good ideas. And it changed my life. It's changed my life over and over again so many times. This one practice. If I had never done this practice, I don't know what would be
And do
happening
you
to me.
walk every day when you're doing it?
No, I'm writing them down. So I usually go to a cafe or something
Uh,
and I'll get my coffee right here, and I would sit down and write down 10 ideas. Like I remember the first list of 10 ideas I wrote actually was I
okay.
wanted to write a book, and this is a bad idea. I wanted to write a book about how to beat everyone at every game. And so, for instance, Scrabble. If you know the Q without U words, you have a big leg up on everybody else in Scrabble. If you
Right.
know the legal X words, if you know all the 3-letter words or all the 2-letter words,
Yeah.
you're going to have a big leg up. Monopoly. If you know to buy the orange properties, you're going to have a big leg up on everyone else. So I'm really into games, and I wanted to make this book. I never wrote the book. I just wrote this list, but that was my first list, a list of bad ideas. And
What's the best idea that you've written down so far?
I mean, now I've been doing this for over 20 years, so I've
Yeah.
written many, many good ideas.
Like what's your favorite?
I mean, that one actually was my favorite, even though it's like bad ideas, and that's why I remember it so well.
It's that bad of an idea.
Well, and I did some research. The next day, I was like, "What? Why should I write this book?" Well, it turns out during times of recession, which we were going into at that time, board games outsell, movies, and because people want to stay home and be entertained.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a bad idea, but I just never did it. But I've written lots of good ideas. This past year has been an amazing year. For instance, I'm helping manage 3 different public companies that all came out of every single public company came out of an idea list that I initially wrote of this would be a good idea, X, Y, Z, and then I would present to a public company that was sort of lagging or not doing so well, and they would change their strategy, make a deal with me, and I would be able to implement my strategy that came out of a 10 ideas a day list. You really can manifest things in your life. It's not just about the law of attraction. Like when you write something down, it focuses you. And then the next day, here's 10 ideas. I'll pick one. Here's 10 ideas to execute on this one idea. And then there on those execution ideas, oh, here's 10 ideas that I need to implement to execute on one of those ideas. And so the idea list really kind of, an idea that works will eventually branch out into a tree of idea lists. And so stuff like that has worked. Every company I've ever started has come out of these idea lists. Every book I've ever written, the table of contents started off as an idea list, and so on. So I really attribute any possible success or failure I've had to these idea lists.
Yeah, I love it. I think I think you're right. I think, sort of being healthy on all those dimensions really matters. And, when you think about when you're off in your personal life, when you're off in your work life, one of those things isn't working well, right? And it's impacting all the things. And
Right.
so it's just like going to the gym. You have to work on your emotional state. You have to work on your physical state. You have to work on your creative state. Like all of those things matter. They're muscles.
You're absolutely right. And look, we can't be perfect every day. Like obviously people are going through divorces, people are going through bad relationships, people are maybe traveling a lot, so it's harder to exercise some days, or maybe they're having some spiritual crisis, but just being aware of this and doing what you can, putting your best foot forward, starting each day fresh without the baggage of the day before, if you can do that, which is very hard. These are all critical things.
I think like at the time when you were at your lowest, was it also just shame that was getting in your mind and
Oh
like
my
were you
God, so much shame, so
yeah.
much. And it's not just one time. Like this has happened to me, happened to me in 2009. It happened to me in, I don't know, 2015. Happened to me a little bit even when I was already like, I sold several companies and was successful. I was having some issues in 2020, not exactly the same, but like I remember when the first time though I went broke, I was so ashamed. I remember I put my house up in the New York Times. Yeah, I put it up for sale. And then the real estate agent put it in the New York Times real estate section. And I was talking to a business partner and he's like, James, we saw your house in the New York Times real estate section. And I'm like, really? That's impossible. My house is not for sale. Now, of
Yeah.
course, he knows I'm lying because someone had to pay to put an ad of my
Yeah.
house. No one would just do that. So, but I was so ashamed that I couldn't figure out what to say. I just blatantly lied, which was so stupid. Like, he's just smiling and he's like, all right. And, I was ashamed, and I've been ashamed every single time. It's just like
Yeah.
when you get a divorce. There's many reasons to be ashamed. Oh, I couldn't make a relationship work, or people are going to think I'm not a good person, or people are going to think this, this, this. Everybody's going to make judgments that you can't control, which is obvious. And shame happens in a lot of ways. And I used to tell myself I don't care what people think, and I've realized somewhat recently I probably actually care a lot more what people think than I thought I did.
So I mean we all do. I don't know. I think it's just a human trait that we can't get rid of. We're tribal. We want the tribe to like us,
Yeah,
and you need the tribe to survive, I think, right? And if you're sort of pushed out of the tribe, you're not going to survive. And so I think we naturally care. But maybe because I think you've reframed some of your thinking around like maybe shame, for example, or failure, and it's more about experimentation and learning, but also like not tying your whole identity to money or success or is I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
it's interesting because you got to be very careful because obviously money is necessary to live and to give you choices and options. Oh, I want to move from Kansas City to London for a year. Okay, the more money you have, the easier it is to make a choice like that. It's not a requirement to have a lot of money to make a choice like that, but again, with
It's
choices
more
like that,
helpful than not. So
yeah,
my six
exactly.
my 6 year old the other day, he came home from school and he's in kindergarten. And this little girl at school, he was like, Mom, Irene, he was talking to her, and she goes, she said her dad takes all their money out into the backyard and throws it in a big hole and that he just doesn't care about money. And I said, "Oh, well that's interesting." And then he goes, "How can you not care about money, Mom? Like money's great." I was like, "Yeah.
It's true. Money can buy candy. Like little kids get
Yeah.
it right away. So,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we only have one life, and you need and the energy and mechanics of making money can only happen in so many ways. Like if you really love poetry to the extent where it fills your mind and you want to do it as more than just a hobby, you can't also tell yourself you want to be a billionaire. I mean, you can, and it's possible. You could be an investor somehow and figure it out, but chances are poetry is not going to be tied to making billions. And
Right.
you have to also do what you love. Like, there was this period from 2015 to about 2021 where I just loved and I was obsessed with stand-up comedy. And I even bought a comedy club in New York City. I started performing every night, often two times a night. And during the day, I mean, I had other work to do, but during the day, as much as possible, I would watch stand-up comedy videos. I would study the art form, like really study it. Like
I can see this. I can see
I would
this.
listen to
Yeah.
each comedian, like where are they pausing? How are they working with the audience? How are they working the stage with the microphone, the room? What's their writing like? How did they, what's the styles of each comedians and how do they change their writing style and how do they do crowd work? And I would just study this. And then at night, I would try things and take the videos of it and watch the videos and then go back and read. So you're not going to be a billionaire if you spend 6 years of your life like that. Even if you're working other businesses and so on, you're not going to be optimized. And that's true. Perhaps I could have made a lot more money during that period if I was obsessed with something that if I was obsessed with making a rocket ship that goes into space, for instance. I'm not saying I could have done that, but I'm saying there was other ways for me to make money. But you kind of, it's really hard to be successful at things you're not passionate about. And I tend to go all in when I'm passionate. And I've gone all in on things like writing, stand-up comedy, playing chess at an adult level, doing lots of things that aren't necessarily related to making money. So I probably I'm not a billionaire. I probably haven't optimized what I can make, given that I have an entrepreneurial instinct. But, you just can't deny yourself either. Like, we only have one life. So you have to figure out how to balance that so you don't go broke and so that you do make money, particularly if you have that skill set. But at the same time, you can't deny who you are and you can't deny the things you love and are obsessed by.
Yeah. We have a lot of founders that listen to this show, and you work with lots of founders, right? And you are one. And so what is your advice for those founders that are listening that maybe have started something? It's not obvious it's going to be successful, but they're incredibly passionate about it. They think it's going to make a difference in the world. What do you tell them?
Well, first off, the whole thing about the 4 bodies, go to the gym, sleep 8 hours, eat well, like, if possible, don't smoke, don't drink because you want to be healthy.
Yeah.
Make sure, I have a podcast as well. I've interviewed 1,500 of the most successful people of all time. Try as much as you can. You might not be in one now, but try as much as you can to have a good, positive relationship or set of relationships in your life, and on, and really write the 10 ideas a day. Again, it doesn't have to be good ideas. Don't feel anxious about executing every idea instantly. It's just get the wheels going, get that creative muscle built, because you're going to need it. Because a successful business is successful in part because it's doing something nobody else has ever done. And to do that, you either have to be lucky, which is very hard, or you have to have a very built out creative muscle. And you're going to have to come up with things and ideas that nobody else is doing. That's how you stand out. And that's very important. And then you have to also fail fast. Like, if you try an idea and it's not working, sure, maybe it'll work if you put a lot more effort into it. You don't know, but be willing also to shut down an idea or a business even and start something new. Like, I have almost every year, I start up and shut down lots of ideas. They might be new businesses or they might be parts of another business. It doesn't matter, but just try lots of things.
It's important though, because I think a lot of, not even founders, but people in general, companies in general, organizations have a hard time of quickly letting go of something that's not working, right? And
Yes.
they hold on to it way too long. And that really prevents you from getting to that next thing that is actually going to be massive and important, right? But you're holding on to this thing that's dragging you down, and it's never going to go anywhere.
Absolutely. And part of that is you have to have a feeling of abundance. So you have to tell yourself, this is not my last idea. So it's okay if this idea fails. It's sort of like a bird, a mother bird with her children. You do the best you can. You hatch the birds and then you throw them out of the nest. They might die when you throw them out of the nest.
Fly. Yeah.
Yeah. And if they die, you don't have a funeral. It's just that one's dead now. Like,
Oh, God.
Now you have to, it's the same thing with your ideas and with ideas in a business. Like, some things just aren't going to work. But at the same time, if you keep coming up with ideas, you're going to be abundant ideas. You'll have plenty of opportunities for success. The other thing is to keep in mind is that every idea and business can be sliced and diced in a variety of ways. Like, let's take your podcast as an example. Okay, let's say you have 20 entrepreneurs on your podcast. Well, now you have the TruthWorks Legends book that you could write, which is the edited transcripts of everybody, maybe divided by category. Like here's sports entrepreneurs, media entrepreneurs, financial entrepreneurs, and so on. So it's,
I
or
like
maybe,
it.
yeah. And then, you could even make, there's Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn. There's a variety of ways to kind of slice and dice your content to build audience. And these are just, a few ideas that are sort of, obvious. A lot of podcasts do these things. But to keep on slicing and dicing your material, you could speak at conferences. Maybe every podcast is a book somehow. You could write a book
It's a
about
lot of books.
creativity off of this one, and just keep slicing and dicing all the content that you have to make more product and get the word of yourself out there. So everything is like that. Like I started a public company recently. When I say started a public company, I contacted someone I knew who was running a failing public company, and I said, "Hey, how about transition your strategy to doing this?" And this involved a particular crypto token and buying it in the open market and rebranding across this token. It was a failed Alzheimer's drug previously, was the company, and they switched their strategy. They had a lot of cash left, and I started putting the cash to work for them. And then we slice and dice a little bit. Oh, nobody really knows about this cryptocurrency. Let's make an entire media site, like a news site, hire an editor, get journalists that's all just reporting on this cryptocurrency. Now we'll sell ads on this site and build that out as well and do a podcast around it. So again, so more and more people know about us and also about this cryptocurrency and why it's so great, and bring in members of the community of that currency. And it's kind of like this virtuous cycle effect. And so again, taking an idea and just figuring out as many ways to slice and dice it is a useful tool for entrepreneurs who feel a little bit stuck, as well as failing fast. So if that site had not worked or didn't get a lot of traffic, okay, drop it. Done. Go on to the next idea.
Right. I love the slice and dice. I'm going to slice and dice after this show for sure. Okay. So I think you've said this, that freedom is often scarier than failure. Have you said that?
That could be. It sounds like something I would say. I'm trying to think of, I don't know if I've said that.
I had the quote from somewhere that I got it, but I think the question really is like, if that's true, right? How does this show up for founders who maybe have already had success and really haven't had a failure?
That was like me after my first business, is that I didn't really have a failure. And that's why it was so easy for me to think I was smart, and that's why it was so easy for me to fail. Because failure is sort of a skill. You have to pattern recognize when it's happening, because you don't really know. You have to realize it's possible to happen. I did not think it was possible to happen to me. And that's crazy. But, if you've never had failure, obviously don't try to seek it out, because that's a very difficult experience. But try to get mentors who have failed, people who have successfully mentored before. So get good references, like who could be a good mentor. And don't think you're the smartest person in the room. Like, listen to your mentors. If you're 58 years old and have had a bunch of businesses, you might know a thing or two about entrepreneurship that a 25-year-old doesn't know. The 25-year-old could be brilliant in his field or her field, but just has not gone through the ups and downs. Like, for instance, it's taken me a good 25 or 30 years to realize I am a poor judge of character. And there's reasons for that. Like, I tend to be a little bit of a salesperson. Salespeople are the most easily sold to. And there's a reason, is because salesperson wants to be liked. So they don't go into a meeting thinking, should I like this person or not? They go into a meeting thinking, I want to be liked. And so that makes you easily sold to. And so I finally realized I'm a better salesman than I am a judge of character. So I have to bring people with me to meetings often to help me determine if this is a good person. So
bring me along, because I'm like a human lie detector. I'll let you know.
Well, you're a human resources person, right? So your job was to detect bullshit in the people applying. You were not selling anything. They were selling to you, and you were the one not buying. So
that's right.
So you are the perfect person to bring into a meeting like that. Like, your whole thing was to judge character. That was your job.
That was it. Yeah. So call me, James. I've got your back.
I just remember one time somebody was pitching a company to me for investment, and I had read about this person And I realized, you know what? There's a lot of red flags here. He's going to have to answer a lot of questions to convince me. And I said, but I know from experience, someone like this is going to successfully answer those questions. He knows that I'm going to ask these questions. He's going to really brilliantly, successfully answer them, and I'm going to love his answers. So I brought someone with me to the meeting to remind me after the meeting to absolutely not invest in the company. And sure enough, I left that meeting saying, Doug, I know what I said before, but he seems great. This could be a huge opportunity. And Doug said, James, you cannot invest in this company. Like, you took the meeting as a courtesy, but everything happened that you said would happen. You can't invest.
Yeah.
That's good.
I have a similar story where so there was this company, and in the Valley, there's many, and Andreessen and Excel and Sequoia and all these firms were investing in this company, lots and lots of money. And he was looking for a head of human resources, and I was at Netflix, and so the VC firms called me like, you got to meet this guy. Like, he's amazing. This company's going to go crazy. Like, you have to meet him. It's like, okay, fine. I'll go meet him. I have one meeting with the guy. I'm like, and I walk out of the meeting. I'm like, I can't believe you gave him any money. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this guy doesn't have a product. He is totally BSing his way through this, which fine. Maybe a lot of founders do at some point, especially in the beginning, right? But your money's going to go down the drain. Trust me, right? And I don't know whether it was like 5-6 months later, company, it was all over the news, and I just knew. I was like, oh.
How did you know the guy was doing BS? And why didn't the venture capitalists, who need to be, in general, good judges of character, so I'm sure many of them are, why didn't they recognize it, what you recognized?
Well, I think he was a very good salesman. And I think he was a smart guy, out of Stanford, as many of them come. And he had a big vision, but he didn't really have anything to show for it. When I kept asking questions about, like, how would this product actually work? And have you tried it? And have you tested it? And who have you tested it on? Because, it was this whole thing, like, he had this idea in the shower. And, like, I was like, well, that's great. But how do you make it a real thing that you're actually going to sell, right? Like, it's fine to, like, have this vision, but how are you going to sell it? And, like, as I kept pressuring him, it wasn't like he had bad answers, but the answers were just very surface and weren't deep. And, like, he really hadn't thought about some of these things. You could just tell. And he had a huge ego, and, he was in his 20s, and, many.
How could you tell he had a huge ego?
Just by the way he held himself and walked, and the way that he talked to me. His balloon he was on, everybody was giving him money. He thought he was, king of the world, and everybody was treating him like that. And you could tell that it had gone to his head a bit. Anyways, he just was kind of at the end of the day, kind of jerky, like, not humble. And, I'm sure, like, if you're given millions of dollars and you're just, like, humility probably goes out the door.
Yeah.
But, and he hasn't had the life lessons that someone like you or I have had. But anyways, it was just, I knew from the moment I kind of stepped in the door, this is not going to work. And it became true. Yeah.
And so how did his, like, given that he was given millions of dollars, how did he spend the money so fast?
I don't know the whole story of, like, where all the money went, but he hired very expensive people. He actually hired some people that I knew, that had been in my life. And so I think a lot of money was spent on that, and big office in San Francisco. I think a lot of money was spent on that. But I don't think there was, like, a lot of money spent on product, which is where you would want the money to be spent. So, I'm sure a party or two here or there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And again, that's probably another example where if you're a young entrepreneur, you really need to have mentors. And I say this because I wish I had had a mentor who could have held me by the hand at different points, particularly when I was in my 20s and 30s, even my 30s up to 40s.
Yeah.
Wish I had had a mentor who could have held my hand and said, you know what, James, this is a bad idea, or you're doing this wrong, or do this instead of that. Because The mentors might not come up with the genius idea in the shower, but they're going to know, don't spend all your money in an office until you have a customer.
Right,
And
exactly.
things like that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Now, because I tell founders the same thing. I wonder if you I tell them to kind of find someone that is a little bit further ahead than they are, but not like, 5 times ahead of where they are. Because I feel like if they get somebody that's like 5 times ahead of where they are, that person kind of forgets what it was like to be them. They were them at some point, but like that recency bias, I don't know, kind of has left the noggin. You kind of black out the things that were so painful sometimes.
I think that's kind of true. It's like asking Brad Pitt for advice how to pick up girls, because like Brad Pitt's not going to have the same challenges that everyone else in the world might have.
Yeah. No, and he probably doesn't even have to try to pick up girls.
Exactly. Yes.
It just happens. He's like a magnet.
Yeah.
Brad, if you're listening, call me. But yeah, I think that's right. You have to kind of have somebody that has had to work hard at the same things that you're kind of working hard at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
So I heard, well, my head of production told me some story about you and Michael Jordan. Speaking of famous people.
I don't know if I have had a story about Michael Jordan. So but I don't know if that could be what he's referring to. One time when I was in my heyday in the beginning, after I had first sold my company, I spent $20,000 or some amount of money to go out to Las Vegas to play in this. You could play one-on-one with Michael Jordan and the money goes to charity. So I didn't even have any interest in basketball. I had never played basketball in my life. So I took a couple of lessons before I went out there. And then I go out there and it turned out you had to be at least 40 years old. And I was 32 at the time. So I didn't even apply. So why didn't I even research this enough to know? And it's just kind of stupid, the whole thing. So I don't know if that's the story he's referring to.
Did you get to donate? I think it is. Did you get to donate that money to charity?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then that's good. At least.
Yeah.
At least you weren't, spending it on, parties and whatnot. You're giving it to a good purpose.
No,
okay,
so that's the thing. Even when I went broke on various times, I never spent that money on enjoying myself in any way. I always just lost the money. Not spent the money, but lost the money. It's not like
mostly on investments, right?
Yeah, and I would invest too big, which is a very classic beginner investor problem, and which I've since learned, and I've since learned many times over. And that's really the critical problem. Is the key to winning the game in investing is staying in the game. If you stay in the game long enough, you're going to win. But you have to stay in the game. You can't lose all your money. That's critical.
No, you can't. Okay. Because we're running out of time. So one last thing. I think you are kind of engrossed in this whole AI thing. And I think, you refer to Siri as 1.0 and what we're kind of heading into is 2.0, and that this really is, where the trillionaires are going to come from. But what should we be thinking about from an investment perspective with AI? Because I think it's unclear where, who's really gonna be a category defining company. But also, what should we just be thinking about as individuals with this next evolution?
It's a very interesting thing because AI is obviously so incredibly useful on every level. But we got to be careful of the AI companies you read about in the newspapers, like OpenAI or Google Gemini or Grok, and the reason is because they're commodities. It's like, how does Exxon remain a big oil company? Well, and I'm saying Exxon's a very, very good company, but it's a commodity. They just have to throw more and more money at drilling oil, and as they drill oil, they'll make more and more money. But it's a commodity. A commodity, it's a race to the bottom. Exxon, Chevron, they can't really, you can only compete with each other if you spend more money than the other person. And so that just general inference AI is incredibly useful to us as customers. But as investors, I'm reluctant to invest in a commodity. Instead, what's not a commodity? Well, let's say I have 1 million patient medical records of all the doctor scribbles, all the prescriptions, all the outcomes, all the diagnoses, all the surgeries. Let's say I have records of 1 million people like that. That actually is real valuable. That's hard to get. It's not a commodity. It's difficult. And, things that are difficult are gonna win. Data, companies that are able to access data, like Scale.ai is an example of this, that scrapes data and puts it in a format good for AI engines, that's a winner. There's other companies that are winners in this space, or there are companies that specialize in, for instance, medical data or insurance data or sports data for prediction markets and so on.
Yeah.
Weather data for the insurance companies. And so data is very important. Also, another thing that's very difficult is hardware. So humanoid robots. We haven't really heard a lot about humanoid robots yet. We've heard a lot about robots like, oh, here's the one-armed welder that replaces the human on the assembly line. But humanoid robots are going to be extremely important because it's hard to make a human. It took evolution, 1 billion years to make one. And why do we need humanoid robots? Well, guess what? The entire planet, all the construction on the entire planet is to make sure 8 billion humanoids can move around in it. So a very functional, multifaceted robot is going to have to be humanoid. It's going to have 2 arms, 2 legs, and an ability to go upstairs, open windows, open doors, reach for higher shelves, reach for lower shelves, and so on. So humanoid robots are a hard thing to build. You need vision. You need to be able to move around at multiple degrees of freedom. You need all sorts of sensory data. And by the way, humanoid robots are going to collect massive amounts of data that they're going to share with each other and share with AI models. So that's going to be an enormous gathering of data as well as humanoid robots become more successful. So I think you're going to see starting this year, Tesla is going to introduce a sub $20,000 robot, the Optimus. And right now in CES in Las Vegas, there are, companies like Boston Dynamics are introducing their robots. So this is going to be a real thing that's going to start growing exponentially every year starting last year, really. And we're going to see more and more of that. So that's another thing. And
how do you feel about having a robot around you? Kind of.
Again, making sure not to confuse it with an actual humanoid. Like, it's just going to be a multifaceted robot. So if I had right now a robot making the bed and then cleaning the bathroom and then cooking dinner, that's not a bad thing, right? That's that's a service that many people pay for.
Need one that can fold laundry and put it away.
Yes, stuff like that is already happening. Yeah. That's going to happen. The home robot is going to be a big deal. Of course, we're going to start to get into, areas that are a little, weird, like pornography and things like that.
Yeah.
That's like the internet, by the way. 1999, the source of all of Yahoo's revenues was pornography.
Porn. Yeah.
This is how a lot of technologies start up. Unfortunately, I'm not saying this is a good thing, but this will, of course, happen. Just like with crypto, by the way. Crypto started off, I don't want to say it was all this, but there was a lot of ways for criminals to hide their transactions was using crypto. Now it's evolved much, trillions of dollars past that, so it's not an issue anymore, but this is how all technologies kind of start off.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. And
it really will be.
I don't want to think about sexual abuse with robots.
It's going to be crazy.
And it's going to happen, I'm sure. Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. So we're going to end. I always end by asking my guests to leave the listeners with a bit of advice. So what do you want them walking away, taking from this? And then we'll do a quick career confession.
Yeah. I would say at the end of every day, not at the beginning, but at the end of every day, look back and ask yourself, what did I do today to help me improve my life by 1%? And we all know 1% compounds to about 3,500% per year, something like that. And, did you work on your physical health, emotional health, 10 ideas a day, spiritual health, whatever it is? But looking back is good instead of looking forward, because then it's a way throughout the day you remind yourself, well, how am I going to answer this question at the end of the day? So so it starts you thinking all the time, like, oh, is this going to be a 1% improvement for me? Is this going to be, rather than having a fixed to-do list that you make at the beginning of the day. So I would encourage people to do that. And again, that's a very kind of self-helpy, wishy-washy, piece of advice. I'm not saying, read this AI magazine and learn how to program, but by the way, you will end up doing those things if you do this practice. So that's the advice I'd give.
I love it. I think it's great advice. And it's, it is self-helpy, but self-helpy is good. You need to help yourself,
Yeah.
So, okay, here's our career confession. So we'll set it up with a little context and then I'll ask the question. So this person says, I repeatedly confuse short-term success and external validation with long-term resilience and paid for it financially and psychologically.
Did I submit this question?
I don't know. It might be you.
I don't think I submitted this.
It says, looking back across your cycles of collapse and reinvention, what signals now tell you early that you're building something resilient rather than just something that's temporarily successful?
Very simple. Did I consistently keep improving? Did I focus today on physical, emotional, creative, and spiritual health? As long as I know I did that every day, I'm not going to slip backwards. Or if I do start to slip backwards, it's for reasons maybe out of my control, but that I can take control over. Like, I forgot to write my 10 ideas a day, so I should start doing those again. My kids are mad at me for something stupid I did. Maybe I can patch that up, or maybe I need to call a friend.
Apologize. Yeah. Apologize. Yeah.
Yes. So just focusing on the present day. Don't think so macro about it. You only have today to work with. You don't have yesterday anymore, and tomorrow is tomorrow. So work with what you can today and make sure you do what you can do today.
I love it. I always think about because you kind of reminded me thinking things about at the end of the day, like when I have anxiety or something, or I feel like I didn't get everything done, I kind of go through the list in my head and then I think about, is there anything with any of the things that I've done or that I'm worried about that I can change or I can control or I can influence? And then if I can do any of those things, then I do them. If not, then I let it go. And I'm like, I did everything I could,
Yeah, and that's a good way of turning things around. Instead of thinking last, what can I control? Oh, I really wish the weather was better today. Well, that's a pointless wish because you can't control the weather. But just starting backwards, thinking what can you control and working backwards, that's a good way. Everybody always says, oh, live life as if it's your last day. That's fine. But what about if you lived life as if it was everyone else's last day and not yours? Then sometimes turning these around, it might change the way you treat different people and focus your energy on different things. And you realize what's important to you. So just turning these kind of classic things around is often good advice.
Yeah, I love it. And listen, I love you. I think you're fantastic. If I could put you in a bottle and sell it, I would, because it would go off the shelves like gangbusters.
Well, I wish that was possible. And let me ask you a question.
Oh.
So here's my question for you.
We can hear you.
Has everyone ever told you that you sound like a very funny comedian, Kristen Shaw?
No, but I used to get that actress. She was in a bunch of these movies. What's her name? Amy something. I think she was in a movie called Chasing Amy or something like that. But I don't know if Amy was her name. But I'll send you who it was. But everybody used to say I sounded just like her.
Kristen Shaw was in the HBO show Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah, I know who she is, but I've never had anyone say I sound like her. But I appreciate that because I like her. I think she's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. Chasing Amy, it says Joey Lauren Adams. I don't know.
Yes, that's her. That's her.
Okay, good. Let me see. I can see that. Yeah, you sound like her.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I do have a distinctive voice, and when I hear it myself, I hate it.
No, it's a very good voice.
But I'm glad other people like it. But I hear it and I'm like, oh God, sound crazy. But anyways, I'm going to put you in a bottle. I'm going to find out. I'm going to slice and dice a way to figure out how to channel your energy and put it in a bottle and sell it because I love it. Thank you so much.
Well, let me know if you succeed. I'll give you the license to all of my energy if you succeed.
Yeah, I'm going to package your DNA somehow. I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. I know smart people. I can do this.
Some stem cell stuff, maybe.
Much. Yeah. Thank you for coming on the show. You're a joy.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It was really a pleasure coming on.
Yay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Truth Works.